Hello everyone, I'm JG. Welcome back to MusicForever, where today I'm going to be counting down my top 10 Mastodon songs. Now before getting into this top 10 list, I just want to say, back in March I reviewed all of Mastodon's albums, so if you're a Mastodon fan, which I'm assuming you are if you clicked on this video, and you want to hear my opinions on their individual albums, make sure to check that out. I have an entire playlist that I'll have, at the annotation at the end of this video, and link down in the comments, or not the comments, in the description down below. So make sure you check that out, because I'm a huge Mastodon fan, and I couldn't even fit all of my favorite songs onto this top 10 list, of course. So if you watch my reviews of those albums, you'll hear me talk about lots more of their songs that I really like that I still couldn't make this list just because I could only pick 10. With that said, I just want to remind you this is my own personal opinion. This is my favorite Mastodon songs. It's not necessarily a list of the top 10 best Mastodon songs per se. It's just, personal opinion here. So feel free to have your own, and if you want, you can leave it down in the comment section down there because I'd like to see it. So let's get started. Coming in at number 10, we have Crush the Destroyer from their first album, Remission. Now, Crush the Destroyer just packs a ton of energy in it. It starts off with a sample from the movie Jurassic Park of the T-Rex roaring, and then it goes right into the super aggressive song. It's quite a short song, but it packs a lot of punch in that short amount of time. I just love the aggression of the track, and it's an excellent way to start off Mastodon's first album. It really tells you what Mastodon's all about, at least what they were all about back in the days of their first album and their second album. That time period, they were a more sludgy, aggressive band, and they were a progressive metal band. Really awesome track. Now coming in at my number 9 position, I have Sleeping Giant from their album Blood Mountain. Now, if you saw my review for Blood Mountain, I talked about how the whole album was kind of like an experience. It kind of tells a story of a man on a journey through Blood Mountain in search of the Crystal Skull. And now Sleeping Giant here, it provides a lot of atmosphere for this adventure. It starts off with this very long progressive metal type introduction that kind of builds up into the track. It kind of gives off the feeling of going on an epic quest. At least that's what I get when I listen to it. And then, of course, Sleeping Giant, I feel like that's referring to Blood Mountain itself. It kind of sounds like it's talking about Blood Mountain as being a dormant volcano. Of course, that's why it's sleeping. It's giant because, it's a mountain. And sleeping has to do with it being dormant. Now, I think that could also connect back to the concept of Blood Mountain because, blood has to do with, like, magma or lava, because that's red, like blood. And I found that was kind of cool. The track really has this epic feel to it. It goes well with the concept. I love the vocals here on the track, how they just kind of have this, epic vibe to them, I guess you could say. I feel like I'm saying epic a lot, but I think that word describes this track the best. The track really saw Mastodon moving more in the direction of a progressive metal band than the sludge metal band that they were before. And I feel like this track really shows off them doing the whole progressive metal thing to the best degree possible. Next on my list, I have Ancient Kingdom from their newest album, Ember of Sand. Now, Ancient Kingdom has a lot of things I really like from Mastodon. It has all 3 vocalists doing their thing, it's got great instrumental parts, and great lyrics to go along with it. As I mentioned before, all 3 vocalists are doing their thing here, and it has Brondale doing his more clean vocal thing that goes well with the newer style that Mastodon does. It has Troy Sanders doing that epic kind of pre-chorus part, and then the chorus, which has a very triumphant feel to it, with the guitars especially. And I think that's rather cool. And then you have Brent Hinds doing his thing later on in the song, which is cool. You have great guitar solo later on in the track, and I just like the way the track goes about doing its thing. It shows off all the best traits of Mastodon, and it's one of the highlights on Ember of Sand. At number 7 on my list, I have Trilobite from their album Remission, their first album, and while Crush the Destroyer, which was also on this album I mentioned before, was just a quick burst of energy, Trilobite kind of goes in the opposite direction, starting off a bit slower, and it builds into this really heavy, kind of sludgy song that, while it still has a lot of aggression in it, it's not super fast. It's not something quite like Crush the Destroyer or some other Mastodon tracks like Blood Thunder that have this really kind of heavy, fast, chugging sort of sound. It's just a bit slower, this track. It's definitely sludgier, and while it manages to be slower, it's not exactly softer by any means. It does a good job changing up the pace on Remission to be this slower, sort of sludgier track that really stands out in the track listing. Overall, fantastic song. And speaking of Blood and Thunder, it's up next on my list. Now, for those of you unaware, Blood and Thunder is one of Mastodon's most well-known songs. It's the first song on their second album, Leviathan, and it sets up the concept of the album really well. And for those of you unaware, the concept of that album is, based on Moby Dick, the novel. And this riff, the riff on this song is just excellent. How it starts off, and then it builds up into the track. The vocals are really aggressive here. I love the chorus of this track. White whale, holy grail, and I'm stopping now. And after I just made myself dizzy, I'm hoping I'm going to be able to finish this list today. Now, the instrumental part that comes up in the middle of this track is also really epic. It kind of breaks from the verse-chorus structure that we see at the beginning before moving into the great bridge of the track, which just has this really kind of epic feel, sets up the whole concept of the album well, and this track really has this sort of paranoid feel that, if you saw my review of Leviathan, I was talking about how much of the album has this very urgent feel, this paranoid feel, and this track exemplifies that perfectly. Excellent way to start off one of my favorite Mastodon albums. It's overall a phenomenal song. The next track on my list is The Czar from their album Crack the Sky, my favorite Mastodon album. And The Czar is just a really epic track. It has multiple parts to it. The song is over 10 minutes long, so there's a lot going on here. It opens up with a slower part. You have Brent Hinds doing his more sad vocals, I guess you could say here, and that's pretty good. It's an excellent part of the song before it heads into the more aggressive part of the track with Troy Sanders' vocals. I love the riffs during this part of the song, especially where the riffs just kind of come in at one point. It sounds really, really cool. It sounds very epic, which kind of goes with the story of Crack the Sky and, how crazy the story to that album is. Just look it up. It's quite insane. And then after that part of the song, we go back into Brent Hinds doing his vocals again. Another sad part, I guess you could say. I really love the lyrics on this track. It manages to tell the story of the album. Despite how crazy that story is, it manages to tell it in such a great way. Overall, this track, despite its length, there's not a dull moment on it. It's a must check out from the album. In fact, the album as a whole is a must check out. Next up on my list, I have the closing track from the newest album, Emperor of Sand, Jaguar God. Now, Jaguar God is, if you can't tell, I like long, epic sort of tracks. I know I've used the word epic a lot so far, but it makes sense with a lot of Mastodon's music. Now, Jaguar God is the closer to Emperor of Sand, as I said before, and that album does have a story to it also about a cancer patient, or at least the story of the album mirrors that of a cancer patient, and it's the character out in the desert with a death sentence, and in this track, the character is supposed to be, they die and they're saved at the same time, and that's cool lyrically, but you have to see all three vocalists doing their thing here. Again, like Ancient Kingdom and some of the other tracks I talked about here, that's another great aspect about this track. It starts off with acoustic guitars, a bit slower, and it's a very sad feel to it before it picks up the pace a bit with more electric instrumentation, changes up the vocals a bit, goes into some different sounding parts, and it ends up with an epic guitar solo. Just an excellent way to close out the song and the album. It's a great album closer, but it's not my favorite Mastodon album closer. Jaguar God isn't my favorite Mastodon album closer because Pendulous Skin is. Now, if you saw my review for Blood Mountain, you know how much I love this track and how much I was talking about the track. And this track seems so underrated, and that's probably because it's quite different than a lot of the stuff Mastodon does. Mastodon tend to be more sludgy, heavy stuff, or more progressive-leaning metal stuff. This is a bit different, this track. It has a bit more, acoustic instrumentation at times, I guess you could say, but not quite the same as Jaguar God. The vocals here sound very, not manipulated, but it's difficult to tell what he's saying and what he's singing here. It's just very, it's difficult to decipher what exactly he's saying, and that's just with the beauty of the track, I think, in a sense. It kind of feels like here in the track listing that the character from Blood Mountain has kind of died, and they're slowly dying, and that's why everything is kind of slurring together. It's like his thoughts are he's dying, everything's blending together as he's falling to death. At least that's how I picture the track. I may be completely off with that interpretation, but that's just how I kind of saw it. The softer instrumentation works well with the vocals as he kind of fades to death. It's just a beautiful track, and it works so well as a closer to Blood Mountain. And I mentioned before that Blood Mountain began to see Mastodon experimenting more with a progressive metal sound, and this track, of course, sees them going that direction with more experimental stuff, but even this track stands out as being unique amongst Mastodon's entire discography. It's a must check out, and it's definitely a really cool track. Coming in at number 2 on my list, I have Hearts Alive from their album Leviathan. This track comes in towards the end of the album. It's the second to last track. However, it's also the longest track on the album, being over 13 minutes long. So there's a lot to digest here. Now, I mentioned when I was talking about Blood and Thunder that the album seems to have a constant theme of, paranoia and, themes like that, intensity, and it switches back and forth between the two. And this track, while much of the album, certain songs may have had that more paranoid, mysterious feel to them, while other tracks have that more urgent sound to them, Hearts Alive has both on them. It starts off with a more acoustic-leaning intro. It has this very mysterious sound, like, something important's about to happen, before it launches into this super heavy, sludgy riff that's awesome. And it kind of goes back and forth between these more mysterious-sounding parts and then these super awesome, heavy, sludgy-leaning parts. It goes back and forth with more aggressive vocals and softer vocals. It does everything. This track just has so much going on in a 13-minute runtime. It's just an epic track all the way through, a great way to kind of end out the album. And it's not the last track, but, it's kind of towards the end of the album, so it's, plot-wise, it's kind of like the end of the plot, considering the last track is an instrumental. Overall, super cool track. Now, coming in at number 1 on my list, I have the title track from their album Crack the Sky. As I mentioned before, that's my favorite Mastodon album. And this track in particular, I feel like is one of the band's best. It features Scott Kelly of the band Neurosis, who's close friends with the band. He's appeared on every Mastodon album besides their first one, and his appearance here on this track really helps the track. He provides some very aggressive vocals, which were uncommon for Crack the Sky as a whole as an album. He definitely has the heaviest moment here on this track. Yet, despite the heaviness of the track, there's also a lot of sadness in it. The track, lyrically, has to do with Ron Dayler, the drummer and vocalist for the band, or one of the vocalists for the band. It's about his sister, his younger sister, who committed suicide when he was younger, and that's kind of what the whole album is about to a degree, but specifically this song, of course, Sky was the name of his sister, hence the title of the album and this track, and you could just tell when he's singing here on this track that the lyrics mean a lot to him. Crack the Sky was the first album where he began doing vocals, and he only had appearance on 2 tracks, this one and Oblivion, which is also a great track, by the way, definitely an honorable mention. But back to Crack the Sky, the track, he only had 2 appearances track-wise on this album, but he made them count, especially with this one. You could just tell with his vocals that this very clean, angelic feel to them, that he's very much in pain as a result of the sadness that he feels. And I love how his vocals have this very angelic sort of feel to them, yet you have Scott Kelly's vocals that have this very deep, sort of angry, demonic feel to them. I love the juxtaposition between the two. It's just a great comparison. And Troy Sanders comes in at one point, or several points rather, with his vocals, which also sound like a nice, bridge between the two, being a bit more aggressive than Daylor's, but less aggressive than Kelly's. It's really, really nice. And then you have the instrumental of the track, which has this sort of spacey sound that's very prevalent throughout Crack the Sky. The instrumental parts just, they can capture sadness, they capture grief, loss, and that sort of spacey feeling all at once. It's just fantastic. It captures the perfect feeling of the track, the feeling of losing someone that you really care about. It captures the feeling of the literal story of the album. It captures the feeling of the entire album as a whole. It's just perfect. So yeah, the instrumental's great, the vocals are great, the lyrics are great. There's nothing not to love about the title track from Crack the Sky. It's just my favorite Mastodon moment, really. It's a perfect track. Well, I think that sums up my Mastodon list pretty well. My 10 favorite Mastodon songs. If you like Mastodon, make sure you check out the album reviews I did for them. All their albums, as I mentioned before, I reviewed. I'll annotate at the end and in the description down below, as I said before. So check that out, and make sure to subscribe if you want to see more album reviews, all kinds of other music-related content, top 10s like this, lyric analysis, discussions, all kinds of cool stuff. Comment down below your personal favorite Mastodon songs or anything else that you'd like to say. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel, and thanks and stay golden.